Before we get to our show, I have an ask of you, the listener. If you're new to us, or you've enjoyed us for over the last 4+ years and have gotten value out of listening, whether that be a new place to eat or a conversation that you've enjoyed, please consider sending some value our way. If you'd like to send a monetary amount, you can do so via Venmo or PayPal, and we are at Faturday Omaha. That's FATURDAYOMAHA. We would appreciate it, and 20% of those funds will go to a food-based program or charity and add value to other people's lives. If you don't have funds to spare, we'd appreciate your time and skills in sharing us on social, recommending us to others, liking and subscribing to the podcast, or maybe you have awesome skills like graphic design, marketing, or anything else. Email us at faturdayOmaha@gmail.com. Let's get to our show. You seem hungry. Good thing your table is ready with Faturday Omaha.
Faturday Omaha.
Eat this. Yeah, I like starting this episode with a sip of this coffee here. Oh, it does have a sweet note.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's super wild.
Wow. So as we roll into this episode, this is going to be the first coffee introduced episode. There's coffee that was brewed right before we started here, and Isaiah Sheese is here, owner and operator of Archetype Coffee, and he just brewed up some amazing coffee. And can you tell me again what those beans were, and then we'll get into some more conversation, because this pretty much there was a bottle of, I don't know, like 1950 champagne, but the coffee version that just got opened here. So what are we drinking?
Yeah, so this is it's called Eugenioides is the varietal, and so it's basically a parent of Arabica. So if you look at like the whole family tree, like this is all Arabica, this is Robusta, you don't want to drink it. Down here are the parents, and so this is one of the parents that was almost extinct that a really fancy farm called Finca Immaculata basically resurrected, and so, yeah, that's what you're drinking.
You said that this is a very limited bean. I think you said that the actual berry that comes off of the plant is very small, so you need more of them to get a large yield. And then on top of that, you had mentioned that because the amount of caffeine is a little bit less in the bean, that it's not quite as bitter, and also that this has a sweet note. And if I didn't know, I would almost say you put a little bit of sugar in here, but you didn't. I watched you make this. So
yeah, no sleight of hand.
Well, but science happening here. I'm going to take another sip here. This is going to be the best caffeinated episode of Faturday Omaha ever. Nice. So glad that you're here. Archetype, known for awesome coffee. You also happen to have some really nice pastries and other things available in the shop. I frequent the Little Bohemia location, and I am always greeted by warm staff and a warm environment. You've got old Marantz receiver sitting back there with some nice speakers up there, and it's just always a nice place to be. So it's awesome. It's awesome.
Thank you for saying that. That always feels good as a business owner to hear, how people perceive your space and the staff. And anytime I hear great feedback like that, it makes you feel pretty warm inside.
Well, it's very true, and that's 100% truth. I always enjoy it, and I am a cold coffee drinker. Typically, I run through, and you guys have some awesome cold brew. And what I really like about the different shops around Omaha, all of our little shops, is if I get a cold brew at each one, they're exceedingly different between shops, and so that's just really cool. So I guess maybe begin at the beginning. How did you get into coffee? Let's start there, because the level to which your understanding of coffee and competition that you do and things like that is kind of like next level and pretty cool to have in Omaha. But how'd you get started doing this thing?
I give all the credit to my grandmother, starting me drinking coffee when I was like 5 or 6.
Really productive in kindergarten?
Well, my dad's side of the family only drank sweet tea, and my mom's side of the family only drank coffee. And so my mom didn't drink coffee, my brother didn't drink coffee, my dad didn't drink coffee. And so I think grandma was like, we're not losing this one. And so, so started pretty young drinking coffee and just fell in love with it from there.
That's awesome. What did Grandma brew?
So Grandma and Grandpa, my grandpa, he's getting ready to turn 92.
Nice.
When they grew up, it was like whatever was cheapest and available, and so, just like that Yeah, World War II, everyone's saving all their money. And so it was always like Maxwell House or Folgers.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like whoever.
Those were the two options.
Oh, yeah. It was just the two options. And yeah, so whichever one Grandpa would always stock up on. Yeah, so cream and sugar and, making it sweet and milky.
Yeah, coffee at a young age. And then how did that turn into, I want to start providing coffee for the world through Archetype?
The short, long story is, no, I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma after school, and I had a friend that opened a coffee shop and asked if I wanted to help. And so I started working for her, and that was kind of like the old school mom and pop shop of like, there's 20, 30 different flavors, Melinda would make you a suicide latte if you want, like, and like, think it's the greatest thing. We had plenty of blended drinks, and so... But then I just kind of started diving deeper into coffee. And so there was a local roaster that opened up. He'd been roasting, and his coffee was very different than what we were serving. And so I just started picking his brain, and he's like, hey, why don't you come work for me? And so I broke up with Melinda. God love her. They're still going. It's called Shades of Brown. Still
nice.
Open in Tulsa. And so started working for Double Shot Coffee. His claim to fame was getting sued by Starbucks over the name and winning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they have that little Double Shot coffee drink.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he got sued, and he wasn't going to get pushed around, and so ended up winning the lawsuit and keeping the name.
Wow.
Yeah, so Brian had taken me down to Colombia on a trip, and I just kind of fell in love with it. The people, the culture. There's very few industries that you can affect positive change locally, nationally, and globally, and coffee is kind of one of those fields that you can. And so, yeah, being in Colombia, being around the people, it was just kind of like a slippery slope after that.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, because fair trade coffee and those kind of things. And my goodness. So now Double Shot, is that of Dundee Double Shot? Same?
No. So we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, this is still Tulsa.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So after that, my wife, at the time we were dating, but she did her fellowship in Milwaukee. So we moved to Milwaukee for 2 years.
Yeah.
As she was finishing up her fellowship. And then she got a job at UNMC.
Oh.
So we moved here. This year will be 10 years. So,
wow.
Yeah, Archetype turns 9 in May, and yeah, we've been here for 10. So it was kind of like that point of my life of either change careers or, follow your passion. And so at that time, there really wasn't anyone in town that could pay me what I'm worth. At that time, it was, Hardy wasn't really around. That was Aroma still at the time. And Bean Smith was still way out west. They didn't even have their own shop. And so it was like, crap, what am I going to do? So the last year that I was in Milwaukee, I took a business writing course and tried to put together a business plan. Didn't really have any money, and then just figured it out when I got here.
Holy smokes. That's awesome. Well, so while you were still in Oklahoma, is that when you ended up taking the trip to Colombia then? Okay. So you got to see coffee at the source. And like you said, a slippery slope there, and I have a feeling seeing the production and those things, since you're already interested in coffee, probably like kind of doubled down on your interest of like, hey, here it is, and here's how, where it's coming from and how that happens.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And while I was in Tulsa too, Barista Magazine had just come out, and they had these little like barista playing cards, like trading cards, like, like baseball, basketball, cards.
Oh, cool.
But it had people's ranks on it, and I was like, what is this ranking? Like I didn't know anything about it. The United States Barista Championship started in 2002, and so people had been competing, more on like the East Coast and West Coast, and so they had a ranking. And so I told my boss, was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to compete. So kind of joking around. Well, so that next year he signed me up for a competition. We had the internet back then.
Sure.
We're talking like 2004. It probably would have been when I was working with him, probably 2008, because I think the first competition was 2009 for me. And so signed me up, and it was like I just had to figure it out.
So he did the kind of the coffee version of just throwing you in the pool and then having you swim.
Oh yeah, absolutely. but you're giving a 15-minute TED Talk while making drinks for judges, and there wasn't YouTube. You couldn't just like look it up and be like, oh hey, what are people doing? How do you do this? What's the format? It was like basically you had to read the rules, and then try to translate what you think that the judges were wanting based off of those rules. And then, I was thrown in the deep end for sure.
And did you swim?
I swam.
How did it go?
So that year I came in 4th at regionals.
Wow.
Which advances you to nationals. And so.
Wow. So you made it to nationals.
Made it to nationals and got my butt kicked.
But still, just to make it to regionals, like out of the gate, that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
was there any advice or training? Did you, go out in the woods and lift logs and punch bushes or something? Or
No,
like,
we're definitely watching a lot of Rocky, but even more than that, like Over the Top, where he's learning how to arm wrestle.
Yeah. Did you flip your hat around backwards?
That's what I did on stage, which is probably why I didn't do very well at nationals. Just trying to find videos online at the time. You could find a couple videos, but not very much. There weren't very many resources. And so then, at nationals, I think that first year it was in Portland, just watching people and taking copious amounts of notes of like what people were doing. But even still, like, the next 2 years, I placed top 6 at all those regionals, but I could not crack, semifinals at nationals. When we moved here, I took a year off and judged while I was doing the build out of the shop.
Oh, okay.
And so when I judged, it was like the most eye-opening thing that I've ever seen in my life.
Just see it from the other perspective.
I wasn't playing the same game. Like, I was playing the same game at regionals, but like at the national level, I just did not understand how they were interpreting the rules and where to get the points.
Yeah.
And so that next year, from then on out, I've made semifinals every year and finals 2 years ago. So
Dave hopping in mid-show. We didn't get to talk about Isaiah's favorite places to eat on his list, so I'll drop 2 of them here. Tixteco on 16th Street for chili rellenos and mole, as well as Salmex on 24th Street for pupusas. Time to take a coffee sip. And it's interesting because a friend of mine and I went and got our KCBS Certified Barbecue Judge certificates, and in the class, the reason we went to do that is because everybody always says, oh, this is competition barbecue or this is competition. I'm like, well, let's go see what they're actually judging on.
Yeah.
But part of the class was that they had the barbecue teams come in and kind of listen and talk. So it was kind of neat to see both perspectives. So I could see where there's quite an advantage to doing the judging. So you can be like, oh, this is what they're looking for?
Oh, absolutely. Completely different perspective and understanding. And a lot of the people that were doing super well at nationals levels had coaches, but coaches were very expensive. And so for me, it was like, just opening a business, like I didn't have the money to be like, to paying someone to help me do that. And so, after that, it completely changed how I approach competition, the coffees that we bought for competition and the tasting notes that we called, everything.
So I don't know word one about coffee competition other than the short little bit that you and I have discussed so far. There's a time limit. Can you describe what it's like to compete and what are they looking for? How does that work?
So basically you have 15 minutes. You're serving 4 sensory judges. You have 2 technical judge and a head judge. So you serve the sensory judges each a single espresso, a single milk drink, and then you create a signature beverage, not using alcohol, and they judge you on coffee knowledge, bar management, taste, and waste. And so while you're serving them the drink, you're giving basically a 15-minute TED Talk as well. Everyone thinks it's all about the presentation, which that is part of it, like how great the presentation is. But really, all of your points are how well you nail your tasting notes.
Oh, interesting. And when you say that, are you presenting to the judge, you tell them what it's going to taste like, and they taste and see if you were successful in describing them?
Basically, yeah. So you have to give basically your tasting notes. Then you have to give like the acidity, the sweetness, and the body, and you describe that. And so it's basically how convincing are you with what you're serving, and you do that for each course.
For those different preparations, are you using all the same beans, different beans, blends of beans, whatever you want to use? How does that work?
So you can use you use whatever you want. So they provide the espresso machine, the grinder, and the tables, but you have to provide all of your glassware, all your wares. You have to serve them water. You have to wear an apron. And so whoever wins in the U.S. represents United States and Worlds.
Wow. Have you been to World yet?
I came in 5th 2 years ago.
That's awesome.
So it's coming up. We have qualifiers coming up in January and March, and then finals in Portland again in April.
Nice. So Omaha is well represented on the national and world stage then via Archetype.
Yeah, the national stage. We're trying to crack in.
Oh, trying to crack into
You have to win.
World.
Yeah.
That's fair. So with the tasting notes and, if you're going to tell them how bitter it is, or like this coffee, you said, hey, it's going to taste like maybe there's some stevia in it, even though there's not. It's a little sweet. So how do you present those different tasting notes? In other words, I mean, is there like a scale? You're like, oh, this is on a 1 to 10, this is an 8 bitter, or how do you describe what that's going to be? Or you're like, this is bitter, or this isn't. How does that go?
I mean, the coffee world is basically stealing a lot of things from the wine world, and so it's almost just like we have a scale of 1 to 100. Typically we talk in fruits, like acidity. We talk just like citrus fruits, But yeah, you're just calling out different tasting notes. Like this coffee kind of tastes like stevia, which is a tasting note. I think it kind of has like bubblegum is kind of a tasting note. Sticky pu'er rice tea is another tasting note on this coffee. But the problem with those, you need to understand what notes your judges can resonate with the most. Like, when was the last time you had a lime quat? Can you pull that out of your brain?
No, I cannot.
So that would not be a good tasting note for me, But it's like when's the last time you had an apple? It's like, okay.
More recent, yeah.
Yeah, what about a Honeycrisp?
Yeah. You know
what I mean? But
sure.
if you add, if I were to say this obscure apple, you'd be like, okay, I get an apple, but I have no idea what that apple tastes like, So it's like you're trying to mitigate your risks with your tasting notes. But be as accurate and specific as possible, because the higher the risk, the higher the payoff.
Got you.
And so it is a very, very, very tricky part. And that's probably the part that took us the longest to crack the code of.
Wow. Based upon where the competition is, because especially I would think, I don't know, but on the world stage, so your judges are going to be from all over the world. A tasting note you might describe in the U.S. might be different. So how does one prepare for something like that?
That's when you need to have friends that have been on the world stage to kind of help you out. Because that's true. You're having judges from literally all over the world. You might have someone from Italy. You might have someone from Korea, from China. I mean, all over. And so you need to be very smart with your tasting notes.
Wow. How do you practice? I mean, obviously probably drink a lot of coffee, but you're obviously not going up there and just, this first time. So, and we were talking a little bit before as well, getting over caffeinated, trying your own brew. So yeah, how does the prep work go?
So, I mean, you have to write a script. I mean, one, you have to find a coffee. Competition coffees are hard to find and procure. And so finding a coffee's first, then it's what do you want to talk about? That's the other deal. Do you just want to talk about the coffee? Is there something that, at the world stage, it's always trying to push our culture further and further and further. And that's the reason why I used Eugenioides. No one in the U.S. had ever competed with it. That coffee, someone from Germany, his name was Wojciech. He worked for Five Elephant in Berlin. He came in 5th with this exact same coffee that same year that I competed with it. I did not advance because the judges did not know how to score this coffee, because it has a very low acidity, very low bitterness, and super high sweetness. Yeah. And so they said that it wasn't balanced because of that. But then the very next year, Andrea Allen from Onyx won with the same coffee. So it's sometimes it's you just have to – I always talk about being on the cutting edge or bleeding edge. Yeah. And some of those competitions, in the U.S., you want to be on the cutting edge. You want to be on the bleeding edge and not the cutting edge, because you're too far ahead of the game.
Ahead of the curve, yeah.
But worlds, you want to push the boundaries. It's what crazy thing can you come up with? How can you push our culture, make us think about coffee different? But the U.S. is still a little bit behind that.
Got you. Thanks for being part of our show with Isaiah Sheese of Archetype Coffee. They have several locations, and you can find one of them at 1419 South 13th. Also, 2 more Isaiah recommendations to eat at, with Mercury on 16th, where they have the Cocktail-O-Matic. I hear the burger's pretty good too. Also, keep an eye out for Nice Rolls at Camp in Blackstone, and Koji in Countryside Village. We're going to head to a few messages, but Saturday Omaha will be right back with more coffee. Quick break, and a note that if you'd like to support our show, you can do so via Venmo or PayPal with the handle at Saturday Omaha. That's FATURDAYOMAHA. And if money isn't the thing, but you have talents or time you can lend our way, just shoot us an email at SaturdayOmaha@gmail.com, or share and interact with us on social and help us grow. Back to the show. Welcome back to Saturday Omaha. Dave Zorko here, and today we are talking all things coffee with Isaiah Sheese, the owner of Archetype Coffee. Isaiah was prepping for coffee competition when we recorded this, and he even brought some amazing beanie goodness to the studio. This is a great conversation, and I learned a lot. I hope you enjoy our talk too. So you had mentioned finding a competition bean. What makes a bean a competition bean versus ending up in my Maxwell House thing that maybe my grandma's putting together?
So we talked about scores from 1 to 100.
Yeah.
You want a coffee that's 90 above, 90 plus. And those coffees are just, I can list the coffees that in my brain that I've had that are 90 plus. Like to break that 90 point line is really hard to get there and achieve. And there's not a ton of farms that are doing it. But the problem for me is the goal has always been to win with a smallholder farm. And so 2 years ago when I came in fifth, I used a farm called Finca Debra in Panama. And that coffee is absurdly expensive, and it is not a smallholder farm,
Yeah.
But those are the guys that have the money to produce that type of coffee. But for me, it's always been like, who pays our bills? We sell like 1% in a year. That's probably how much of those types of coffees we sell on our website.
Yeah.
But, like our daily drinkers, the ones that actually pay our bills, like those coffee farmers should be just as celebrated as those other ones.
Yeah.
So it's always been like this hard dance for me to figure out,
Trying to represent both coffee types at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, my moral standards a little bit higher.
Sure.
And like I'm a very idealist when it comes to, coffee. And so, it's a tricky dance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're a small local business owner. You're representing other small businesses. Yes. You put a lot of pride in your product and you want to make sure that, that the word gets out there. So when you said 1 to 100, now is that an objective scale when you're looking at those beans, or I'm still so interested in the separation of competition to non-competition coffee. Like, how do you decide it's a 90, or you try it and you're like, yeah, it's a 90?
So the specialty coffee industry, in order to be specialty coffee, has to score at least an 80. Below 80 is going to be what we call commodity grade.
Okay.
And so all the coffees that Archetypes, we serve are all above 80. Most of the coffees we try to like 84 and above. So like even our espresso blend, which would be a cheaper coffee than your daily, than some of our single origin coffees, like it's still going to be an 84, 85. So what we're always looking for is like sweetness, clarity. But the specialty coffee, you cup coffees, and that's how you score them. So just like you're tasting wine.
Okay.
What we do is it's called cupping. You put the coffee in a bowl, you fill it up with water. So you score the dry aroma, the wet aroma, then you score the acidity, sweetness, bitterness, clarity, and then the aftertaste. And so each one of those categories gets 10 points, and there's 10 categories, and so it adds up to 100. And so whether you're in Omaha, Nebraska, or whether we're in Ethiopia, we're all going to cup the exact same protocol, and we have cupping sheets here just like they do there.
Got you. Okay, so as you are trying these coffees, though, are you rating them for yourself, and you try it and you're like, I believe that this is an
absolutely.
80? Okay, so it's not like the industry or the farm has already, they don't hand you this sheet and say, Isaiah, this is a 95.
Some farms do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, that's like, obviously tasting is very subjective, but for us, like at Archetype, to be a good taster, you need to be very objective. And so even if there's like an origin that I particularly don't care for, a processing style or a varietal that I don't personally can I still score it well? So Sumatra is not my favorite origin. They're really earthy. They're super huge body. A lot of them do wet hulling, which basically means they don't dry the coffee all the way before they export it. And so the moisture content is very unstable. And so that coffee can fade on you very fastly if it's not stored correctly. And so I don't particularly care for them. But if I'm a good taster, can I score a whole table of 20 Sumatran coffees and tell you which one is done well and which one's not done well? And so that just comes from lots of experience, lots of training, and understanding what's defects, what's, preference, and what's, good and what's not.
Dave hopping in mid-show. Hope you're enjoying our show with Isaiah Sheese of Archetype Coffee, whose Blackstone location is at 3926 Farnham. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll get back at it in just a moment. How do you avoid going taste blind, I guess, when you're drinking so many different coffees,
Sure.
So you're not like, you just get lost in the mix there.
Yeah, I mean, spitting, and it's really training. Like your tongue is a muscle and understanding how to use it. And so it's lots and lots of training. When I was in Milwaukee, I was a quality control cupper for a company up there. And so there are days, that we would cup, 4 rounds of tables. Each coffee has 3 different cups, and we would have 20 coffees on a table. So that's 60 cups. You're going to go around the table multiple times. So you have to be very efficient and understand how to taste very efficiently. And so it just takes a lot of practice.
Wow. And so in judging barbecue, one of the hardest things in learning that was that you are judging just the plate presented to you, not the one you had before it, not the one you have after. You're not supposed to compare.
Nope.
Is that similar to the coffee scoring?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Especially like, the United States Barista Championship, that's like what the whole training is about, is like you're judging what's in front of you. We're supposed to put everything out. We are very much human though, so
Sure.
I can tell you, like I said, those 90 plus coffees, you better believe when I'm buying coffees for Archetype that I'm comparing those coffees.
Oh, you bet.
What I think has really helped us in buying better and better coffees is because we've been exposed to better and better coffees over the years.
Yeah.
And so it raises my standard of like what I want our coffee to be. And so even though it may not be this like crazy fancy farm, there's some farmers, small farms that are doing some awesome things. And so I think it's allowed us to taste and find better coffees because have that exposure.
So we've talked about a couple farms that you've visited or encountered. And how do you find these places? Because I don't think we're growing a lot of coffee in Nebraska, so you have to go out and seek them out. I mean, we do have Google, but how do you find these places?
Yeah, so I mean, you work with lots of different importers, but then going to competitions, you're tasting lots of different people's coffees. And then when we started traveling to origin, you're visiting lots and lots of different farms and getting exposed to so many different farmers. And so that opened up the whole world, is, starting to visit, those countries and just travel around. So you just have to constantly be hunting, good coffees and always be on top of the game.
That's fantastic. And so you already mentioned Colombia. Have you got any more passport stamps traveling elsewhere to go visit coffees?
Yeah, we've been to Mexico. Matter of fact, I was down in Mexico 2020 March when the COVID bomb dropped.
Yes.
So we actually got shipped back early, which was interesting. But I've been to El Salvador. So 2020, I was hoping to do Mexico, Ecuador, and Ethiopia.
Okay.
So that was the goal. And then since then, it's kind of been on pause. I just didn't feel it was responsible for me to travel when, we were able to get the shots, but, a lot of those countries didn't have exposure to the medicine. And so you're traveling to these very remote places. And so I didn't want to risk potentially, even if I was asymptomatic or whatever, bringing it to those areas. So we kind of pushed pause for a little bit on traveling to farms.
That makes sense. Sense. So what's happening at Archetype at the moment? Now, I know you said you're preparing for competitions. So what's happening there?
Yeah, so it's competition season, which is always tricky because we come out of holiday season and you're just like...
Just right in it?
No, it's just right in. It's like it's like the busiest time. And then normally it's like, oh, we've got a little lull. But since it's competition, you just put your head down. And so, we just bought a brand new roaster called Stronghold.
Okay.
For competition coffees. And so we just got that. So we're trying to get that hooked up and dial in. We have 3 coffees for competition that we're hopefully going to be using. And so really it's just got our head down trying to run as fast towards that. Yeah.
Trying to do all those things. So how does the coffee that you get, because you roast all of your coffee at Archetype, how does the coffee come to you? Is it, berries, dried berries? How does that work?
No, so it's green. So coffee is the seed of a coffee cherry. And so, we get green coffee and then we sample roast it and try to figure out what we're going to buy. So we work with different importers. We work with different farmers. They send you samples. You sample roast them all. You cup them all, score them all, and then figure out what you're going to buy for the year. So once you get it, we just start roasting.
So I bet that smells delicious. Now, do you roast daily? How often do you roast?
We roast about 3 times a week right now.
3 times a week?
Yeah.
And how much poundage or how much coffee are you roasting?
We roast a lot, yeah. We have quite a few wholesale accounts and then a website with lots of different subscriptions. And so, we're roasting currently on a 30-kilo roaster. So roasting about 45 pounds at a time.
Gotcha.
And then, for your specialty coffees. Like, for Christmas, we always offer some pretty insane coffees. Those we usually roast on like the Stronghold, like a much smaller roaster, because when you're putting a very expensive coffee in there, if you 45 times whatever the dollar amount of the cost, you don't want to screw that up.
That's real fair.
Yeah.
That's real fair. Now, are there any farms or beans? So Archetype is, I think we said 9 years, or about to be 9 years old. Are there any coffees that you've had the entire time, or have things kind of rotated as you've gone?
It's kind of rotated. So when you're small, a lot of importers aren't like hunting you out.
Yeah.
Obviously, supply and demand, they don't, they know our demand is very low. So it's like, why would they be searching us out? So in the beginning, I just started putting more eggs in fewer baskets. So working with smaller importers to really develop those relationships and cultivate those relationships. And then from that, we met Kyle Bellinger from Osito Coffee.
Okay.
His whole goal with his importing company was like, how can I connect roasters to farmers?
Oh, cool.
Small roasters aren't able to import directly because the risk is huge. And so, but how can he still connect those farmers to those roasters so you actually have a relationship? So when I said we were in Colombia, the first time Archetype went to Colombia was like 4 years ago. And we started working with a young cooperative called La Maraya.
Okay.
They're a bunch of, I call them kids. They're all in their young 20s. And so a lot of them don't have enough coffee to sell on their own. And so they pull all of their coffee together. And so we buy a big portion of La Maraya. We've been buying that for 4 years. And then Lucy is one of the female farmers of the group. We've bought all of her pink Bourbon, which is a special varietal.
Okay.
We're the only ones in the U.S. that have it, and we've bought it for the last 3 years.
Wow.
So we've got we're starting to develop some special relationships, but it's just taking a long time, just being small, and, travel is not cheap.
Right.
And so when I was in Mexico, we'd been buying from Teohumolco, which is another really unique cooperative in Mexico. We'd been buying from them for 2 years. And so we're slowly now developing those relationships of farms that you're going to see, rotate every year. So super exciting.
That's fantastic. I think it's so cool because one of the things I like about our small local business in Omaha, and Archetype obviously being one, is that friendly personal feel and supporting. Here you and I get to talk to the business owner here. You're not in a lofty office somewhere, although if that's what you proceed to do someday, but but it's so cool to have that personal touch, and the fact that you are able to make a personal connection to those that are providing your coffee as well. That's fantastic. That's a whole nother level.
Yeah, we always say you're not drinking. You're drinking someone's livelihood. Like you're drinking a farmer. Most wines, what region it's grown from. Who's producing that wine, and so it's like the coffee world is finally getting away from just all blends and with just like a name on it, but you actually know what country it comes from, what region it grows in, how it's processed, and hopefully the farmer that you're actually buying from. So.
Wow. So farm to cup, long distance.
Yeah, legit.
There, so
Legit farm to cup.
That's wild. One term, and maybe you can help me out with this too. I seem to recall there's something about like first wave or second wave coffees or something along those lines. Yeah. So can you educate me and those that listen to us? What's that about?
So there's first wave, there's second wave, and now they call it third wave, which is what we do. And third wave basically didn't start happening. I think the first time it was lightly mentioned would have been in like the 70s. It didn't really get coined probably until I think 1999.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The second wave was when you're getting away from all commodity coffee, and so Folgers, Robusta. Second wave is like, okay, we're only drinking Arabica coffee. Like the difference between Robusta and Arabica. Robusta is very bitter. It's super bitter, mostly commodity coffee, has tons of caffeine, and it's just really resistant to disease. And so that's the reason why, everyone was producing it. Well, Arabica tastes way better. And so it's like, that's why, in the 50s, 60s, it's like Maxwell House, 100% Colombian. It was like stamped on there, or like 100% Arabica. And so then basically Alfred Pete was kind of the one that said, hey, we're going to start buying, legit from farms, and we're going to get away from all of the commodity stuff. And so he's kind of the one that started pushing it in that direction. And then, it's like, well, hey, let's push it even further. Let's know who our farmer is, how it's processed, what varietal it's coming from. And so third wave is kind of getting into that where it's like we're identifying with those farmers and it's specialty. It's no longer gourmet. It's no longer all commodity stuff. It's like more relationship based and it's more quality based.
Dave here. Hope you're enjoying our show with Isaiah Sheese of Archetype Coffee, whose Blackstone location is at 3926 Farnham. Also, sneaking in a few more recommendations from Isaiah. Check out El Basha for Mediterranean on Pacific and Blue and Fly on 72nd Street, where they have a more traditional Chinese menu available. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll get back at it in just a moment. Last stop before the end of the show. If you've got value in your life from our show, be that entertainment, information, or maybe just a laugh, please consider sending value our way via Venmo or PayPal with @FaturdayOmaha, that's FATURDAYOMAHA, and 20% of monetary contributions will go to a food-based program or charity. Truly, thank you for listening and all your support. Welcome back to Saturday Omaha. Dave Zorko here, and today we are talking all things coffee with Isaiah Sheese, the owner of Archetype Coffee. They have several locations, and you can find one of them at 1419 South 13th. Let's head to the show. Obviously, the appetite or thirst, I suppose, of those in the U.S. has adapted and come along, and I think people are enjoying, these different coffees and different types, and definitely from one coffee to another, the flavor can be radically different. So as evidenced by the coffee that you and I are drinking here, I didn't even know that a coffee could have a sweet note that strong.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So did Omaha take to what Archetype's philosophy was pretty rapidly, or did it take a minute for people to kind of catch on to, hey, we're doing something a little different here?
I think it took a little bit of time, especially, yeah. I mean, we're not known to be dark roasters at all. And, it used to always be like, are you a light roaster or a dark roaster? That's not how we like to talk about coffee. Like, we like to choose a profile that's going to showcase the farm, the varietal, the processing. And so, when we're buying coffees, instead of doing light or dark, our goal is like buying wine or beer. Like you can buy beers that are light or beers that are, have a big body. So Same way with us, we like to, if you want a coffee that's going to be heavier, like a Brazil is going to be heavier. It's going to be fuller bodied. It's going to be like nutty, more on the earthy side of things. But then we have coffees like, our natural process Ethiopians are going to taste like you're drinking fruit juice.
Oh, wow.
And so our goal is to develop the coffee fully and properly. So you're penetrating the inside of the green coffee and making sure that you're developing enough so that you're not getting any roast off taste of underdevelopment and you're not getting any roast off taste of overdevelopment. So we try to hit that sweet spot.
Goodness gracious.
We use lots of science. We have an Agtron, which basically reads your roast color. So it basically almost like takes a picture of the outside and it'll tell you what degree of color that is. And then you grind it, the same one, and it'll basically take kind of like another picture. I'm simplifying it.
Sure.
And it'll tell you the color on the inside. So it'll tell you your degree of roast from the outside to the inside.
Oh, so how well is that when you were discussing the penetration
of it.
of the roast was how far into the bean it
Absolutely.
Wow.
There's lots of different defects. So like there's green defects, there's roast defects. And so, like, we try to mitigate all of those and use science as much as possible to figure that out. So you, the end customer, aren't tasting those.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I assume there's lots of tasting and lab experiments to make sure that you have the right thing and the thing that you want to serve.
Yeah, we use psychrometers. We have moisture density readers. So we have a refractometer. We've got lots of toys.
Okay, so the Agtron was the one that was checking
the roast color. Yes.
The roast color outside and inside of beans, and then you mentioned three other things there.
Psychrometer.
Yeah, what is that?
It's a water activity meter.
Okay.
So coffee's a seed. It's not a bean. It's not a legume.
Right.
And so to be specialty grade, it has to be dried to a certain moisture content.
Okay.
And so that's why we have the density moisture reader. So that will tell us, is it dried to the right moisture content? Well, psychrometer will tell you the water activity. So is that moisture that is in there stable?
Oh.
And so mostly importers are the only ones that have those tools. But there are lots of defects, like I said, and so transportation is getting crazier and crazier.
Sure.
So, is a shipping container sitting out in the ocean waiting to be unloaded for way too long? And so, once again, this is a seed,
Right.
and so it has a shelf life. And so, the only way that we can make sure that we're getting coffee that is super stable and going to be the best quality for Omaha to drink is to make sure that we have those tools that importers are using as well.
Wow. And then the I think it was a refractometer. There was one that you okay. Yeah. So you were explaining this to me a little bit earlier, but this is cool. I like a little bit of some physics and science too.
Yeah.
So how does that work and what does it do?
So a refractometer will tell you exactly what your total dissolved solid is. So we take coffee, we grind it, we pour water over it. So what's soluble material is about 30%. So if you just keep running water over it, that's going to be soluble. The rest is the coffee grounds that we just throw away. But of the 30%, you actually only want to extract around 18 to 22%. And so a refractometer will tell you exactly how much you've dissolved and give you a reading. And then you have to be able to correlate that to taste. So once again, like it gives you a reading, but you still have to be able to understand what that reading means and how it tastes and how it applies to your beverage.
The human factor is still there. Absolutely.
It's still there. Yeah.
Now, are the coffees that you prepare for competition, are they roasted differently? I know you said too that depending on where the competition is, you might get something that's way out of the box or not as out of the box. Or is there a hard difference, I suppose, from the coffee that I'm going to get at the counter at Archetype versus what you might serve in competition, or I might get a competition coffee there. Like how does that work?
Usually after competition, I'll serve my competition coffee. We usually do it like 1 or 2 days. They're usually really expensive, and so it's kind of a tricky thing to navigate.
Yeah.
Like once coffee is roasted, it's a perishable product. So there's a shelf life of it. So even normally when I'm competing, there's a certain day that I'm going to brew that coffee on for competition. Usually it's around like day 13 to 15 off of roast. And so, when you roast that expensive coffee, you just don't want it sitting on the shelf.
Sure.
So that's normally the reason why in Omaha we'll just do like 1 or 2 special days, put a blast out and be like, hey, we're serving this, come and get it.
Limited engagement.
Limited engagement for sure.
That's awesome. There's just so many bits and pieces. And so for those out there that thought there was just some beans that you threw in a cup, there's obviously a lot more to it, especially when you're putting the care and time that Isaiah, you and Archetype are putting in there. So with the beans, and so you actually brought some beans with you. I've got an Ethiopian, looks like here, with notes of gin and tonic, bergamot and apricot, and one from Honduras with brown sugar, cacao nib, and cashew flavor. So very different.
Very different.
Different. So sounds like you've done the hard work ahead of time so that by the time it gets either in my cup that I get at Archetype or these beans that are whole bean here, you've done that hard work. So, I mean, it's pretty easy if somebody comes into Archetype, they can just buy a cup and enjoy your labor there. But if somebody's going to make it at home, do you have any brewing tips or anything to make sure you get a decent cup of coffee for yourself if you do pick up some whole bean here?
Yeah, absolutely. Your coffee's only as good as your water. So coffee's 98% water, so you want to make sure that you're using good water. So filtered water, spring water is great. There's like third wave water packets.
Oh, really?
There's a couple different companies that do it, but it's basically all the exact minerals that you need, the pH that you need to make the best coffee. So you basically buy a gallon of distilled water, you dump that packet in there and shake it up, and then you have perfect brewing water.
Oh.
So for the coffee geeks at home that want to have the same water that we use, that's the way to do it. Otherwise, I say just get a great spring water. The next thing is just a good grinder. You want a bird grinder. If you're using a blade grinder, the problem with it is you're going to have lots of fines and lots of boulders, and so you're going to have a very uneven extraction because the fines will over-extract, the boulders will under-extract, and so it's never going to be consistent. Other than that, people don't realize you're calibrated to drinking your coffee how you brew it at home every day. So I can elevate your game, but honestly, our coffee is awesome. So if you're doing it the same way that you're doing it, you're going to enjoy it just about the same.
When you mentioned the third wave coffee packet and the minerals, so distilled water, but you need minerals and things in the water to extract flavors from coffee. You don't want anything that's just with nothing.
So you want a specific alkalinity, you want a specific hardness, and so for coffee to extract, you need minerals in it. We always say like water's a recipe.
Yeah.
There's some companies out there that will sell you all the different things that you need. So if you wanted to kind of go like Bill Nye Science Guy on it.
Yeah.
And so like for competition, Jesus, one of my baristas, he'll be in the Brewer's Cup as well. So I'll be in Brewer's Cup and barista. He does Brewer's Cup. We've been messing around with all sort of different like water recipes. And it's amazing. Like you'll have a coffee and you'll drink it and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. And the next one, same exact coffee, same brew method, same everything, just different water.
Yeah.
Completely transforms it.
No kidding.
Yeah. So the coffee that he's going to be competing with, we've on our third or fourth different water.
Isaiah was prepping for coffee competition when we recorded this, and he even brought some amazing beanie goodness to the studio. This is a great conversation, and I learned a lot. I hope you enjoy our talk too. Wow. It makes total sense hearing it from you, but I wouldn't have thought about that. I think I would instantly go to the beans.
Yeah, beans, but water.
But water, but like you said, that 90% or 98%.
Yeah.
So you better think about that because that's honestly the number one ingredient.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
Wow, your fourth water.
Yeah, the one that he did today is pretty awesome. So we might stick with it. We'll give it a couple days and try it again.
So you prepared this coffee for us to share this evening, and so tell me about the water that I'm drinking. And what am I drinking?
So our water, we worked with Phil from Future Amex. He has a little water company. They do reverse osmosis. So before I opened Archetype, I had him make me up like 10 different waters.
Yeah.
We had our coffee and we cupped the coffee with the 10 different waters. We narrowed it down to our 3, and then we tasted it multiple times just to see which one. And we ended up with a specific water that we like with our coffee. So the other thing that people don't think about is we roast our coffee for our water.
Sure. Okay.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's like the tricky thing is like people are like, oh, it doesn't taste like it does at the shop. And I'm like, well, it's our water. So then I try to give people pointers on like, well, what water are you using? Because, if you're just using Brita water, it takes all of the bad aromas out of it, but it's still very hard water. And so the coffee's not going to be near as vibrant and sparkly as it is in the shop.
Omaha tap water, is that going to...
It's brutal.
It's brutal because it's super hard, right?
It's brutal.
So you gotta go for.
Listen, don't don't hurt my coffee, man.
And the listeners can't see, but I'm like, the look on his face was like, please, whatever you do, don't take tap water.
Please don't do it. It's not. Yeah,
it's not worth it.
All that blood, sweat, and tear from those farmers. Listen, do it for the farmers, guys.
Lucy out there that was making that varietal, and then all the ometers that you have. Please don't disgrace the hard work and the
spring
science.
Spring water.
Just
get spring water.
I must confess, until this evening, especially when I do cold brew, I may or may not use tap water.
There's no shame.
I'm gonna have to try it though.
There's no shame.
But a fun tasting experiment, I suppose, is to make 2 batches,
side
one
by
with
side.
the tap, and then and just see what the difference is.
Put it in the same cup, mark 1 cup, mix it around, so you don't know which one. Blind taste that thing.
I love it. Yeah. And so you had said there's 10 categories of judging, which I'm glad it's split up that way, because when you said 1 to 100, I'm like, that's a big scale, but it makes more sense that you're adding up those individual categories. Is there like a website out there where somebody can like download the tasting sheet so that you could grade your own coffee?
Yeah, Specialty Coffee Association.
Perfect.
It's all there.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, they've got a flavor wheel too, which is a great tool that they redid the last couple of years. And so it's just like a flavor tasting wheel.
Yeah.
So just like wine. And it has like the defects on one side, and then it has all the positive characteristics. So, it starts with like earthy things, like the positive earthy notes, like chocolate, and then like citrus fruits all the way to berries and all the way around.
This sounds like one of the possibly best like office team building things ever would be like a big coffee tasting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not only would it be delicious and fun, but everybody's going to be highly caffeinated coming out of there. So
it gets rowdy.
The rowdy coffee tasting. So are there coffees out there? So no, this particular coffee has a little less caffeine level in it. So if somebody, if caffeine affects them strangely or anything, any recommendations on something that may not be as caffeinated that folks can typically get or something?
We've had decaf coffee that's great. In the old days, like decaf was pretty trashy.
Yeah.
It was pretty terrible. Like in the beginning, I was like, I'm not serving decaf. Like, 'cause it just didn't taste good.
Sure.
But basically, they've in the early years, they were using formaldehyde.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, which most people didn't realize that. And so that's
Yeah.
the reason why Swiss water became so popular, is because it's like, oh, is this Swiss water processed? Because it's like, you don't want to use crazy chemicals. You don't want to drink
Yeah.
it, right? Ingest it. Well, now even years, gone by, now they're using ethyl acetate, which are like sugar. It's like alcohols from sugars.
Okay.
And they actually are able to extract the caffeine out, and it keeps a lot more of the integrity of the coffee together. So our decaf actually tastes like coffee, which is really nice, which is really weird to say, but like
Yeah.
in the early years when I was doing coffee, like you'd open the decaf bin and I'm telling you, it smelled like McNuggets from McDonald's. And the only reason why I know that is because I worked there in high school. So,
so you know.
so I know, I'm like, oh yeah, this is chicken nuggets. It was always the weirdest thing. I was like, how do people drink this? And so, yeah, the last 10 years, they've light years of research and come a long way to actually making it taste good.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. I mean, now if you did have a coffee that tasted like McNuggets, I don't know. No. Let's
maybe
just, maybe
no.
Maybe McRib. No,
No.
definitely no. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, well, good deal. So, so more preparation for competition coming up.
Yeah.
And Archetype always has good things happening, and a warm environment there as always, and knowledgeable staff that knows what's going on. And
Thank you.
so, and yeah, it's a good deal. Anything else happening in the local coffee scene at Archetype, anywhere that you want to get out there and let the people know?
Let the people know.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
I wanna let the people know about?
Your soapbox. Preach on some coffee here. Okay.
Support local.
Yeah.
Quit going to Scooters and Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, and there's plenty of coffee shops out there. I mean, Hardy has multiple locations.
Yeah.
And you got Zen and Amateur and
Yeah.
Fat Seed. I mean, there's tons of places
Got
to go.
Rally
Yeah, Rally
downtown.
downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, there's coffee shops almost everywhere that you could actually support local. So, I mean, if I was going to get on a soapbox, that's what I would say.
That's perfect. And
Yeah.
canvassing the city. You can find local shops just about everywhere. So and we've got Beanery now is kind of on the outskirts
They're on
there.
the outskirts.
So
Stories, I think, is out west. And,
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I mean, there's quite a few shops if you want to support local, and I think everyone should.
Do you collaborate ever with some of the local shops on it? Do you guys talk coffee every once in a while, or is it like
I mean, it's not like that. I mean, every now and then we do. Every now and then, there's a latte art throwdown, which is fun if you've never participated or come to watch. I mean, it's a pretty rowdy event. So
nice?
I think there's actually one coming up. I want to say Zen Coffee might be putting it on.
Geez, Zen, we didn't.
Yeah. So they're trying to do some things, building some fun community. So yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, Isaiah, I could talk for a full another hour, but definitely want to be respectful of your time. And I am so appreciative. So we had talked and we kind of scheduled pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. So you and I must have been caffeinated properly to get this going.
Yes.
But the fact that you showed up with all the gear, brewed coffee in here. We have quite the high level coffee. If you were gonna, what was our 1 through 100 rating on this coffee?
Oh, this coffee. I mean, so in the coffee world, there are Q graders, which are basically coffee graders like a sommelier. This coffee, you were asking about a score sheet. It came scoring over 90.
Nice.
So I mean, yeah,
So definitely a high.
it's super high. Yeah, the sweetness is so high. The body is very structured, and so it's a very high scoring coffee.
I love it, and this was definitely a high scoring conversation for me between the start with the coffee prep, and I learned so much, and it was so fun talking with you, Isaiah. Thank you
Likewise.
so much for being here. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks for
it.
having us.
Awesome. Well, we will sign it off here in Saturday, Omaha. Dave Zorko here. And as we say, until we eat again, stay hungry. Bye. Our show is recorded and produced by Saturday Omaha. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as email SaturdayOmaha@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and stay hungry.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this.